Hello and welcome to the Three Peaks podcast.
where we take a break from the hike of life
and appreciate the view.
Today we will be interviewing Caleb, the wordmaster. Caleb, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Great to be here. Nice to see you.
We would like to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience and just get to know about what you do.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone, and greetings from New York City. I am right now sipping a little bit of tea. My name is Caleb. I also go by Wordbucks, and I am the world's first word tycoon. I basically sell words, awesome, wonderful words. I stock insulting words, beautiful words, romantic words, wise words, words that you never knew you needed. And I basically sell those words to people who are in need of awesome words to express themselves. I think everyone uses words in this world, so everyone can be in need of a good word, and I'm the one who helps connect people with those words. It's a great business to be in because honestly, there's no competition. I think it's a startup, a lot of room to grow, and I love doing it. I meet some amazing people. That's how you three and I got connected. And so far, it's been a really great journey. I just started doing it a few months ago, but I could not be more pleasantly surprised with how much traction it seems to be getting and what a warm response I'm receiving. So really pleased.
That sounds awesome. Okay, so we will start with a questions. What inspired you to create Wordbucks, and what is the main mission of your idea?
The inspiration came while I was in college. I was an English major, and what's an English major to do for a living but sell words? Writing short stories and books and screenplays is really hard, and there's a lot of people trying to do that. And what's a lot easier and what has a lot less competition is actually selling individual words, I've found, where you try to custom tailor a real word for someone and give them whatever piece of vocabulary they need. And I think people seem to recognize that there is value in these enriching words. So it's worked out really well. And that idea came, I guess, that would have been about 10 years ago that I was in college. I remember writing a diary entry about the idea of words for sale business. And then I kind of got away from it. I think I didn't really have the confidence back then when I was in college to pursue an idea as wild and crazy as that. And my life took a little bit of a different turn where I was still doing teaching. I was an English teacher for a little bit, and then I kind of wandered to some other jobs along the course of my life. But I always had this idea of words in the back of my head. And it was only a few months ago, or I guess 3 at this point, that I really got back to this idea of doing words for sale. To answer your second question, I had the idea in college. That was primarily a way to kind of put food on my table, is how I conceived of the idea. And now that I've kind of come back to it a little bit later, I think what's been added is the mission of really trying to reach wider audiences with valuable vocabulary, because every other piece of word media I see out there, whether it's an Instagram channel or some sort of Coursera or a masterclass, literally every single one is tailored to an elbow pad suit jacket wearing audience of college educated people who kind of had a similar experience I did. And I think that's a real shame, because the reality is the whole world appreciates words. Everyone can enjoy a good word and get value out of it, whether it's helping them articulate a tough time they're going through, or helping them express aspirations for what they're trying to achieve, or just say I love you to someone who makes them feel special. Everyone can benefit from that. And the mission of Wordbucks is really to reach those people who right now don't have anyone trying to, introduce them to the wonderful world of vocabulary. And I'm not saying it's for everyone. Some people don't need words at this particular moment in their life, but I really believe every person at some point in their life will be in need of an awesome word. So I'm trying to create, my mission is basically to put that impact out there and make a source so that when people do want the words, they'll be waiting for them. And it's not just a kind of esoteric knowledge base that only appeals to a small group of people, because it appeals to everybody. I'm not getting audio right now.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
All right, excellent. So, word bucks. You're taking words, you're putting them out there, and you're allowing people to, buy them and share a wider vocabulary with so many people. So, how do you take the words and how are you able to sell it? How is the transaction working there for your business?
That's a really good question. So there are really two ways that I sell words. The first is physically. I set up a booth in various parks of New York City with a big cardboard sign that has words for sale sharpied on it. And that is a little bit enigmatic. People walk by, and most of them I can see on their lips the words for sale. They kind of curiously look at it. And the reality is most people keep walking. Most people don't need a word every day of their life, but a surprising number of people do stop after they've kind of said words for sale. Kind of I see it on their lips, and then they do walk up and they ask what you just asked. How do you sell words? And then I basically tell them the first word is free. After that, it's pay as you like. Some people give me cash. I've had people draw my portrait. I've had people who work at various places around New York City come by for a free whatever, anytime you like. And that's good payment. I have a very progressive payment system. I'm not really trying to hoard the words, but I just ask that people pay as they like. And I've got a few different product lines, which I'm happy to discuss. I don't want to turn this into, a marketing center, but if you're curious, I can tell you more about how I organize the inventory. And I think that helps customers orient themselves and find the value that I can really offer and kind of bring joy to their lives through. The second way I sell is digitally. I have a website, wordbucks.com, where you can go and browse the selection of those categories of inventory that I kind of alluded to earlier. And I definitely get more enjoyment out of the physical customer interactions. I've got a lot of, great people who I've met through that, a lot of wonderful conversations. I was just selling words in Washington Square Park until midnight last night. And it's really interesting how the types of people you saw words to change from the morning on a Saturday to midnight on a Saturday. You really get the full spectrum of humanity. So selling in person, definitely my preference. It's more personal, but I do recognize that to really make WordBucks have the impact I'm hoping it will, there needs to be an online presence as well. That's definitely how you amplify this mission and reach people who say aren't just in New York City, because even that is a small slice of humanity. I love New York City because it has such an eclectic, diverse mix of people, but it is its own little world within the larger world. So being online is really important for the mission of this too.
Right. And then when it comes to your business of selling bundles of words, what are some of the challenges that you have faced when creating it, and how did you overcome them?
That's a great question. So with the bundles of words, that's basically a wholesale offering where you can get a group of thematically related words. And I think that helps people kind of get a sense of what kinds of words they might be shopping for. An individual word seems kind of random, but the appeal of the word bundle is you feel like you're getting a package of words and you can make sense of it. The challenge there is finding a collection of words that is cohesive. So often I'll find an individual word, which I think is beautiful on its own. A good example of that is the word apricity. Apricity means the feeling of warmth you get when the sunshine hits your skin in the winter. I think that's a beautiful word, but for a while it was an orphan word. I didn't really know how to package it with others. It's kind of it's such a rare, unique word that it's hard to know what kind of company to give that word. So that's kind of the challenge of a word bundle. It's how do you find siblings or cousins for what are my favorite words, which tend to be the ones that are esoteric and have a very particular meaning.
Yeah. And I was just wondering, who is your target audience and how do you think you engage with them?
My target audience is really everyone, which I know is an awful answer. Every piece of business advice I've received from anyone or any book or any online article is make sure you have a really specific target audience. Know your demographics, know your age group, know your gender, know your ethnicities, know your income levels, and kind of have all these different categorizations and target and tailor your content and your words to that sliver. Because the reality is, yeah, you can put, three different criteria of demographics into your target audience. And because there are literally billions of people in this world, you'll end up with a massive audience still, even if you chop it up and sliver it.
Right.
That's antithetical to what WordBucks is about. So I really believe that WordBucks is targeting everyone. And I want to target people who are logophiles and already love words. And I want to target people who detest words and remember sitting through third grade class, just looking at the clock during English class, thinking, why do I have to learn words? I know how to, talk with my friends already. I can't wait for recess to begin. I can't wait to go home. I really believe WordBucks needs to appeal to both of those groups of people.
Yeah. Right. And one thing with WordBucks is, you're in New York City, you're out with a lot of people making connections. What is one remarkable story or interaction you've had with one of your customers that really impacted you to see the profound connections you can build just with words, with WordBucks?
I think I'd have to go through a lot of stories. One that I can give you from last night, which definitely was touching to me, was when an immigrant came up to me who was learning English as a second language. He didn't have a lot of confidence with words. He was clearly someone who wanted to improve his vocabulary and was working on it. But, I think he was the first to, basically acknowledge, my English isn't very good, but I'm trying really hard to learn. And I think that's true about everyone. Everyone has little grammatical, quirks to their language. No one's English is perfect. But this was someone who was really trying in earnest to make it better. And I sensed that there was definitely the aspiration and a little bit of embarrassment, to be honest, at not having a great grasp on English, or a relatively good grasp on English. And I kind of talked to him about what kind of word he might like, and we kind of realized that he had this partner who was overseas who he really missed. So he wanted a romantic word is what he needed last night.
Mhm.
And the romantic word I gave him was from my antique collection of words. It's the word lucida, which means the brightest star in a constellation. And I love this word because just as there are many stars up in the skies, there are many people on this earth, but only one or two light up your world like nobody else, and they are your lucidas. And that was the word I gave him. I think he understood that abstract meaning pretty quickly. And I got the sense that he had a real sense of pride in having learned and mastered this gem of a word, which all of the other speakers who he meets who do have a good quote unquote grasp of the English language probably don't know. So it's kind of like he doesn't necessarily have the same foundation as other people, but no one can take away from him the fact that he has this special word and now something to offer in the English language to whomever he meets. That's something he can teach to just about anyone, because we all have lucidas in our lives. Maybe not literally everyone, but most of us have a special person or two, whether it's a romantic partner overseas or it's just a mom or a dad or a kid. So that is a word you can teach to anyone. Please spread the word if you like. Your loved ones, let them know that they are your lucidas. But for this individual, I think it kind of gave him a new sense of pride in what he has achieved in English and being able to understand a word like that and now offer it. And most importantly, I think he was really looking forward to taking that word and calling his Lucida tomorrow and letting her know that she's his Lucida. So that was a touching experience, and having him thank me and kind of express just seeing and when I say, he didn't literally say thank you, but just seeing the appreciation is what it's all about. And there's no greater payment, quote unquote, that I can get than seeing that on a customer's face and knowing that I've kind of made a little bit of a difference through one word.
That's remarkable. And you mentioned before that you have a particular system to categorize the words and, put them together so you can offer them to your customers. And if you could explain how you get them categorized and, getting the perfect word for your customers, how's that system work for you?
Yeah, so there's a few different types of categorizations. The simplest one I've found, because it is going back to your original question of how do you sell words, it's really tough to kind of orient people. I think once they get the concept, then we can kind of be rocking and rolling and working with, you need a word for that, you need a word for these things. Okay, let's give you that bundle. But how do you get started? And the simplest way I have found is through a temporal analysis, where it's basically I have three types of words. I have antique words, which I research from ancient manuscripts and medieval texts. I have classic words, which come straight out of the dictionary. And I have new release words, which I source from pop culture. And those have not yet graduated to major dictionaries, but they have bright futures ahead of them. And I think they'll make it there soon. And once I kind of give people that sort of temporal overview, I think it kind of appeals to different personalities, right? Like some people are very traditional and old school, and they immediately gravitate towards an antique word. They want something that's kind of vintage and has a story behind it, and that's where they go. People who are more, they want more practical and might be a little bit more well known. They go for the classics. The idea of just taking a word out of the dictionary that is unusual, but is something that they might appreciate is simple. It's straightforward. I love all these words, but I love those too as much as the antique ones. And then as for the new release ones, those tend to appeal to a younger audience, where kids, young adults, or even older adults. Actually, older adults want to know what the kids are saying too. So again, these appeal to everyone. They will want to know a new release word, and that's something that often can come from television, rap, an award ceremony, some sort of neologism, which I see trending and popping up, which hasn't yet made it into, say, the Oxford English Dictionary, but because of cultural trends, I think is destined to make it. And those are a lot of fun. I have to be really careful about those because I don't sell fraudulent product. I really,
Right, right.
that's one thing I didn't mention yet. I don't make up words. I only just watch, listen, read, and write down the ones that I like. Those are the ones that I sell. I'm not trying to be a word inventor before here or like a lexic. There's a word. There's actually a word for that, or a phrase. I think it's a lexical morphologist, someone who kind of crafts words and bends them to their specific needs. I think that's a beautiful art. I wish I could do that. I'm not there yet. I'm just simply observing and then trying to connect people with the vocabulary that they need. But yeah, the new release ones are fun. And I think once you kind of give people those three different ways to access the words, that helps them dive in.
Yeah. And then when it comes to businesses, especially yours, I feel like they have to stay with the trends and keep up to date with new things. So for you, how do you stay up to date with new words, or how do you keep updating the words that you don't know?
So for those new release words, the easiest way is actually buying words from customers. I will ask customers, what's a new word that you've been hearing that you really like? Most people don't necessarily have an answer for that, but a surprising number of people do. And it can be as simple as an acronym. I've had a customer recently tell me the acronym JOMO, meaning the joy of missing out, kind of the foil to FOMO, which as an introvert, I absolutely love. There are a few pleasures which are as great to me as when plans I didn't want to attend get canceled at the last minute. Um, and or when for whatever reason I can't, attend something and I have a legitimate reason, that gives me JOMO, the joy of missing out. Conversely, I've had, on the other side of the word spectrum, acronyms I think are great. You get lots of words in one word. I've had customers give me amazing individual words. One customer recently gave me a very magnanimous $100 tip for or purchase for a word bundle.
Uh-huh.
And then they asked, for a few more, I was happy to throw those in, for free, obviously. $100 is a lot more than I would ever expect anyone pay. People pay what they like.
Yeah.
But at the end, I did ask them, what's a new word that you like? And they taught me the word floordrobe. Have you heard of this one?
No.
Okay. So you may not have heard of it, but you probably know what it is. Floordrobe means the clothes that accumulate on your floor, which are not clean enough to go into your closet, but are not dirty enough to really justify putting in the laundry yet.
Floordrobe.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, good. Yeah, and I'm totally guilty of that. I have not met a single person who doesn't understand that word or doesn't have a floordrobe of their own. That's the type that is a type of word that I expect to be in the dictionary in a few years. And there's no substitute for talking to real people about what kind of words they're hearing, what language trends they're seeing. So that's the best source for finding these new release words, honestly.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, so when you go out in the parks or the streets and you have the cardboard box, how do you, because I feel like some people will have some downs about, you selling words. How do you explain it to them of how important words are?
I basically how I try to get them to realize that words are something we use every day.
Yeah.
There are a few things that you use every day. A toothbrush is one of them, but that's something you buy every 6 months if you're doing a good job at the drugstore, or that you get from your dentist once in a while. What are other things that you use every day?
Shoes, clothes, car,
Clothes.
hairbrush, glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are all good things, and we generally have a source for all those things, right? If you want a car, there's probably a car dealer on some major road near where you live. If you want clothes, you can go to your nearest, shopping center and go to Marshall's for a good deal. But where do you get words, right? You could open a dictionary and read it from cover to cover, but that would take a lot of time. I've done that. I can save you that time. And I think, words are wonderful. Wonderful things are worth paying for. And that's really the value that, you have someone in front of you who can give you a word for what you need to communicate. And so much of the richness in life comes from communicating. It's from storytelling, from expressing affection or, distaste in an amusing way, in a sincere way, in an ironic way. Relationships and language are so much of what give us satisfaction, having the right words for something. Like, don't get me wrong, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes the right word is priceless. And that's what I try to offer people. And, as I said, most people, they don't stop and buy a word because maybe on the average day, most people don't need a word, but at some point, and not too infrequently, people need a word, and that's what I'm trying to be here for.
Yeah. And with learning all these new words, how have you seen yourself personally change and grow with the way you talk or the way you act or the way you treat relationships?
That's a really sweet question. I think that it's made me a more empathetic person. So definitely having met all of these people makes me think a little bit more deeply about just what experiences people are going through. There's another great new release word called sonder. Sonder means the realization that every other person you pass on the street has an experienced life that is just as rich and complex as your own, with inscapes. That's a classic word meaning kind of the innermost part of someone's consciousness, kind of how you feel, what your mood is, how you emote on the inside. Everyone has these diverse, rich inscapes, and just getting to access those, because people, when they request words, they do tell me some pretty personal stuff. And getting to have insight into that has definitely given me a richer appreciation for Sonder and the diverse inscapes that are out there. So, I would say it's maybe a more empathetic person. I've always tried to think of or tried to be an empathetic person, but this has allowed me to definitely intensify it. And I think it's also just honestly, it's given me a much richer vocabulary. When I started this project, or I conceived of this project as an English major back in college, I enjoyed words, but I was not a wordsmith like I am today, where I now have, these notebooks, and there's a dictionary on my on my dining room table here that I was doing some research in before we started this podcast. I did not have the diverse vocabulary that I do now, and I did not bother all of my friends and family with telling them cool words. So that has changed, I would say. I now am insufferable when it comes to delving into vocabulary. It's kind of cute the first time, and then people get a little bit sick of it. But I think at least they realize they're getting some enriching vocabulary. So, it's a fair trade.
Yeah, yeah. So on your Instagram, you post like word of the days, and I was just wondering, how do you come up with the word of the day? Like, is there a special thing that you just think of and then you come up with the word, or how does that work?
So the word of the day selection is really driven by the physical sales in New York City's parks. I try to get a sense of what words in my inventory are resonating with people. And sometimes that's seasonal. So a word that I mentioned earlier was apricity, meaning the warmth that you feel when the sunshine hits your skin on a cold day. That would have been a great word to have done if I had been doing Instagram posts back in January. Now we're in June. It's in the 80s. It's hot. No one wants to hear the word apricity. People want to get away from the sun. No one wants to feel the warmth of that sun.
Yeah.
That's like I wouldn't, if I sold that word today, there would be very little demand for it.
Yeah.
Similarly, Instagram, I think people would slap me in the face digitally if they could. So there are a better word for the summer that has been resonating with people is the word ambrosia, meaning the food or drink of the gods. That's kind of the origin of the word, and it's evolved to its modern meaning of simply something that is refreshing and rejuvenating. So when you're suffering through a hot day and you get that ice cold bevy, that's an example of ambrosia. You just kind of feel, enlivened. So it's the word of the day selection on Instagram is driven by what demands I'm seeing in stores in New York City's parks, I would say. And the word of the day has definitely, evolved quite a bit. It's still something that I'm tinkering with, trying to figure out, what's the right length for a word of the day? Do you want to make it really short? Because you're asking people to use their brains and work really hard, which isn't necessarily why a lot of us go to social media, right? I mean, I'm guilty of this too. When I look at who I follow, it's all like animal channels. I like watching cute kittens and like dogs do funny stuff. And that's totally okay. Like I wish I never had a dog growing up. I haven't had a cat since I was a kid. I miss having like animals in my life. So yeah, that's what I like on Instagram. And if I had a kitten or I had a dog, I'm sure I'd be watching twice as many because I would get even more out of it because I kind of know the idiosyncrasies of these animals better and I have better appreciation for it. Anyway, sorry, that's a ridiculous tangent. I'm just talking about what excites me. And yeah, it's animal videos as much as words sometimes. So yeah, like I don't know. Like sometimes I try to make these daily words short and pithy and deliver the value and the education and as condensed a soundbite as possible. Some of those videos do well, some of them don't do well. On the other end of the spectrum, I've also played around with doing a longer format where I'll go into a little bit of etymology around a word and I might tell a fun fact or an interesting anecdote from someone's life that relates to the word. Some of those videos do well. Sometimes people stick around, and some of them totally flop, where the retention is terrible. And I'm seeing that the average person is only making it 20% of the way through the video. And then the algorithm on social media just kills it and doesn't start, it basically stops showing it to other people. And I am a neophyte when it comes to social media. It's never been something that I was very enthusiastic about. As an outsider, it's pretty interesting though to learn about it and try to figure out the mechanics of what succeeds and what doesn't. And I'm definitely still a student of that, figuring it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we just want to say thank you again so much for taking the time out of your day to meet with us. It was an absolute pleasure learning a couple words and, getting to know your story. We're going to move on forward with our final question, and on the podcast, it's usually known as the big question. Are you ready?
I don't think so, but I'll do my best.
Our big question to you is, what advice would you give to younger generations?
I think it's this is trite, but it's absolutely follow whatever you love doing and work hard at it. I think if you really love doing something, you will succeed at it, and you will find other people who love doing that thing and will support you in your efforts if you work hard at it. There's no substitute for putting those two things together and exploring until you find it. So I definitely went through a couple different career paths where I pursued one thing. The first time I did that, I pursued something I didn't enjoy doing for a few years because it was remunerative, and I saw that it would give me security, and I liked that it had the potential to be well paying, and I pursued it for several years, even though I kind of suspected in the back of my head that this wasn't something that I loved doing. And I think that was a dead end that I should have recognized a lot sooner. So I stopped doing it and I started kind of doing something else. And that wasn't really for me either. But because I remembered how miserable I'd been doing the first thing, I stopped doing that second thing a little bit sooner. And that was a really important lesson, is kind of recognize dead ends and acknowledge sunk costs and move on to something new. I think, whether you are, before college, after college, or well after college, the reality is you still have time to start doing something new that you love. And I would say keep experimenting if you have not found that thing that you love. Some of us are lucky. We find it as kids. We know exactly what we want to be. Most of us don't get so lucky. And then it is important to kind of remain nimble and keep thinking, what I prefer to do to this, but always be doing something. Start anywhere, just keep going. What you don't like about something will help you identify what you might like doing instead. There's this great Emerson quote: when it's darkest, people see the stars. So even if things don't feel so great, it's still a valuable experience. It will help you learn what you love doing. So just begin anywhere and keep going until you find that thing you love doing. And then hopefully when you succeed in that and get lucky, you will be able to put in the work because you'll love doing it and you'll naturally want to pursue it. And again, you put work and love together, and that's an incredibly potent combination. To get have to be willing to experiment and be very honest with yourself about what you do enjoy doing and what you don't enjoy doing, and know when it's really time to lean in and go for it. And that's the advice. It's nothing that hasn't been said before, but hey, I'm one more piece of anecdotal evidence that it can happen and that it's worth doing.
Yeah.
All right,
for
go on.
sure.
Well, thank you again so much for meeting with us. It was an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much.
Armani, Yvonne, it's been such a joy. I can't believe that we're already at time. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for having me so much. This was a delightful conversation, and have a great rest of your Sundays. Thank you so much.
No problem. Well, that's all we have for you guys on the Three Peaks podcast. We hope to see you on the trail next time.